In this episode, we'll give you guys a market update now that we're halfway through 2019.
And then we meet with a top Asheville builder to talk about the new construction process and provide some value for those considering building.
Welcome everyone to episode number 3 of Asheville Real Estate Monthly. We just wrapped up the second quarter, so I figured this would be a good way to start with a little market update. If you could kind of fill us in on what's going on residentially and what changes we've seen in this quarter, and maybe compare that to what we saw last year at this time.
Yeah, sure. So not a whole lot of change. We're still on kind of the same trajectories in a lot of those areas. The main difference being, home values are continuing to increase, but at a slightly slower pace than last year around this time. So we're at about 5.4% increase this year so far, whereas last year it was, at a really fast 8.3%. So, that's still good news for sellers. More good news for buyers being that we do have a little bit more overall inventory on the market. Now, we are still seeing kind of a lack of inventory in those under 300,000, price range, which is kind of driving those prices a little bit higher. And another thing would be interest rates. They've been on a steady decrease since the beginning of the year, and they actually in quarter 2 hit an all-time low for the past 3 years. So, that's causing a lot more movement, and we've actually had a big increase in the first week of June in applications for new loans, new mortgages.
Yeah, so it sounds like we kind of talked about that last episode, but that, again, decreasing, interest rate is creating some extra buying power for some folks, it sounds like. Yeah,
and then another good point is right now is a really good opportunity for, homeowners that maybe are in that under $300,000 price point where, we don't have a whole lot of inventory. Those prices are continuing to increase faster than some of those higher brackets. So with the interest rate so low, you've got a little bit more buying power. You can move up to one of those price points where we have a little bit more on the market and have a little bit more competition there to sell your home and, just stand to make a little bit more. So it's a really good time for sellers and buyers, so we're seeing a little bit more balance, and that's really exciting in our market. What can you tell us for the commercial realm? Any changes so far this year compared to last year?
So we really haven't seen a significant change since last year at this time or in the last quarter. But what we have seen, I would call it, is a softening of the market really overall. So, we've seen slightly less transactions compared to this time last year, both buying, selling, leasing, you name it. We've also seen vacancies come up slightly. Again, just slightly, no big warning signs or anything like that, I would call it. It's really just a leveling off and softening from this, this incredible rate of growth we've seen in the last, 7-8 years, really. So, the big question a lot of people have when I talk about the market softening is a bit of fear. I think a lot of people permanently have some fear after the last recession of, is the market going to turn around now? Are we seeing some sort of signs of a coming recession? And, I don't think so at all. Again, it was just a softening as I described it. And the positive is what I say is this is a really good thing. We're seeing some resistance to the market finally. We look back at the previous recession. What was the challenge there? There was really no resistance to the amount of spending and lending that was going on. We're starting to see that resistance now, and it's kind of correcting the market in a positive way in my eyes. So what I'm seeing when I say that resistance is we're starting to see buyers that aren't just willing to sign a blank check for a property because it's maybe a prime piece of property. We're starting to see people go, look, these numbers don't pencil. There's no way we can buy this for what our business does and have an NOI that makes sense. On the other side of that is we're seeing lenders tighten up, both banks and private equity. We've started to see, especially in this last quarter, where those lenders are no longer just freely lending money as they did before. They're starting to really look into what those specific assets are and being a little bit more firm on the decision making.
So when you talk about this kind of tightening up, but things are still good, are there areas that maybe investors or businesses should be a little bit more leery of, or?
So I always caution people, this is something I always talk about with my clients. I never like to tell anybody there's a really great part of the market or a really negative part of the market, because it really depends on the specific property and the specific business, usage, you name it. So with that said, though, something I'm keeping my eye on, and I think everybody in the commercial real estate world really should, is the retail world. This is something we've seen the start of a pretty significant, what I would call a revolution, and I think we're just at the beginning of it, and I think the elephant in the room, obviously, is the big names like Amazon that have totally changed e-commerce. I mean, now we've got 2-day prime shipping with the discussion of 1-day shipping. Stuff like that has really been an interruption to the retail market as we know it. So, what we're seeing is some of the traditional retail approaches aren't working as well as they used to. And a good example of that would maybe be like locally here, malls. So we've seen the proposed project for the Asheville Mall, and turning that into kind of a mixed use space to better utilize that space and kind of a live, work, play environment. Additionally, the Asheville Outlets is a great example. A property that just years ago, that mall was sitting with probably 50% or more vacancies, and simply a structure and marketing reapproach turned that into a thriving, top of the market, retail experience. And it's really driving visitors to come shop there from out of town, out of state. So, little things like that can make a big difference. My caution is, if you're an investor and you own retail property, just start paying attention to that. And especially, if you own property that may be big box leases, stuff like that, the big box market hasn't been doing that great. How can you utilize that property if things went south for a tenant? And if you have a larger, maybe a plaza or a shopping mall, how can you reincorporate that property into new uses? We've seen stuff like, shared office space is something that's been thriving in those environments. Mixed use, like the Asheville Mall we talked about. Can we put residential in there? Maybe some office space, entertainment, you name it. So just something to think about. Again, nothing to scare anybody, but that's an area that I think just needs attention if you're an investor.
Well, great. There's nothing too scary there, and some wonderful food for thought.
Yeah. So now, we'll take you to our segment this month where Nichole's going to meet up with Sean Sullivan of Livingstone Construction and hopefully provide you guys with some really valuable information if you're considering building a new home.
Today with Sean Sullivan of Livingstone Construction, and we're happy to have him here talking about new construction for residential purposes. So if you can tell us a little bit about, what your background is, how you got started in this industry.
Sure, Nichole. So my father was in the military, so we grew up moving around. I had an awesome workshop in his garage, so I grew up breaking all of his drill bits and bending all of his saws and dulling all the teeth.
I'm sure he was very thankful for that.
Yeah. So once I got past that, I started building things with him. So I started building rubber band guns and selling those to the kids in the neighborhood. So I was incorporating business and carpentry all the while. And then in college, I studied business and graduated with a business degree in management. And from there, we started working with Habitat for Humanity, and that's where I developed a general love for construction. And so after that, I went to work for a custom home builder right out of college.
All right, So we're seeing a little bit of a push for, home buyers in the market. They are looking to build, but they find it to be very intimidating. They're not sure what to expect. So, what are some tips or some things that they should be aware of if they decide to go down this road? What should they be concerned with up front? And what are some things that to maybe put some of those fears at ease?
That's a really good question. We get that all the time, and there's no easy answer. But I would just say to do your due diligence. The more research you do, the more information you'll have. And you don't want to be a WebMD online finding out all the solutions to building. You just want to find somebody that you can trust, somebody that has lots of experience, and somebody that has a team around them to support them. And then more information is more power. So when you're getting plans, you don't want to look for a deal necessarily. You want to get plans that have a sufficient level of detail in them so that your builder can follow them and you can reasonably meet the expectations that have been set.
So as far as starting this process, do you recommend they go out, they start looking at lots, or do you recommend they maybe reach out to some builders first and start dealing with an architect first?
It's a great question. We get both scenarios frequently. It's really better, in my opinion, if the client looking for land finds a really good realtor, someone who focuses in land, someone like yourself. There's not very many realtors out there that specialize in land or that are interested in land because land has a lot of unknowns. And so that's another reason to find a team, somebody that works together, somebody that's very experienced. But when you do find that person that specializes in land, that understands land, they're going to be able to talk you through the pros and cons of one lot versus another. Once you've narrowed it down, and maybe even after you're in due diligence, that's a great time to go ahead and ask the builder to become involved, because the builder can come out and put their eye on it and start giving you some ballpark estimates.
So realistically, what should someone expect from, deciding they're ready to purchase a lot to completion of a build? I know that can vary, but what's a good general take on that?
For a time frame?
Yeah.
Time frame for building a custom home in the mountains will vary based upon your program, your budget, and the lot topo. So the lot topography is going to change completely. If you've got lot A and it might be a 10% grade, and you've got lot B and it's a 25% grade, you could be looking at a couple month difference there. But a year is about an average for a custom build in the mountains.
Okay, so what sort of questions should, potential people looking to build ask these builders when they're interviewing them? What should they look for?
Great question. We get that all the time. I would recommend a number of things, 3 probably. 1, I would ask about their experience level. What type of homes do they build? How many homes a year do they build? Where do they build? And see some examples. The second thing is I would ask for some customer references. Now everybody can come up with a reference, a family member, a friend, or somebody like that, but if you ask for at least 3 within the last year, that's probably a good indication of how they're currently doing. The third thing is I would ask for financial references. Nobody ever asks that. But this industry is highly leveraged, and so if you check financial references, whether it's with the bank and or subcontractors and vendors, all 3 would be ideal. You'll get a really good clear picture of the whole concept that the builder's working under and what their current state is.
It's perfect. That's something I didn't really think about, and I'm sure a lot of people in that market don't really think about asking financials. Okay, so one of the biggest fears I think a lot of people entering this, idea of building have is, how can we stay on budget? So what are some questions or some steps that they can take to ensure that they are staying on a budget that they set?
That's a great question. As opposed to building a spec house or buying a pre-built house, a newly built house, a custom home is completely different because the client is involved in all the selections. And so we all have champagne taste and beer budget, myself included. So there is some discipline that will be involved in staying on budget. But going back to the first question about, getting an architect with a decent set of plans that has enough specifications to where you can meet the outcome, the desired outcome. If you have those specifications, you can put together a thorough enough estimate, and then you want to review that estimate with your builder and then make sure that you feel like these allowances or bids are comfortable enough for you for the process. Then once you've started, you've got to be disciplined to go through a series of selections to make sure that this is what I'm budgeted for, this is what I want, and where's the compromise going to be. So the short answer is yes, you can stay on budget, but you have to be disciplined.
Okay, Sean, final thoughts for anyone on the fence about building a home.
So there's two types of buyers. There's the type of buyer that just wants a new home, and then there's the type of buyer that wants to build their forever home. If you're the one that just wants a new home and you're not completely financially prepared to build a custom home in the mountains, my suggestion is to find a new home that's already built in the best location you can find. Then you've got some financial certainty. If you want to build a custom home and you've got the ability to do it right, then my suggestion is consider aesthetics. And so you want to get someone to help you with the colors and the selections, and they can also help you stay on budget, but ultimately you don't want to have any regrets with your home. The second thing, if you build a custom home, is to build it as energy efficient as possible. So if you build an Energy Star certified home, your home will be built very energy efficient. That's going to give you a more comfortable living environment. It's going to save you on utility costs for years down the road. And it will also give you a 5% discount on your power and gas for the life of the home, and that's transferable. And then the third thing that I would consider is building it green. Because you're building an energy efficient house, you're trapping yourself in the home with any of the products that you bring in. And so building with indoor air quality in mind is really important. And so with that, I would just say, get help, build the Energy Star, and do it right and build it green.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Sean. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for asking me to come.
Yes, thanks for answering these questions. I'm sure that's going to be really helpful for some of these people. And if you guys stay tuned, he's going to go behind the scenes here. We're on a job site, and tell us a little bit more about some specifics that, you know, might interest you.
So Nichole, some of the things that are different about us than other builders is that we have specifications written for everything that we use. So clients will say, what am I getting for my money? So we have all of our products broken down, products and services broken down into cost codes, and each cost code has a certain specification that's been written. So for example, you can see here on the edge of the foundation, we have vertical slab insulation. That is really important. We have a detail in our specifications showing our foundation contractors how that should be formed and laid, so that when our energy rater comes in later on in the process, she will know that that whole edge of the slab has been insulated in advance, and we can simply stucco over it. That's really important because for the life of the home, that will always be saving the client energy. Another thing that you'll notice is that we specify the type of lumber that we use. And so the lumber, the adhesives, any product that comes on site has had a certain amount of thought and research put into it. Also, when you're looking at framing, you'll see some advanced framing techniques. In the corners, you'll see California corners, which are open, so insulation can be filled in that. It's not just dead wood. You'll see boxed headers, so that header is actually a C shape instead of a square or a rectangle. That means that we can fill that with insulation. This whole edge here does not have wood framing because it's all glass, and for it to be all glass, we have to specify and design for it to be designed with steel beams and posts. That will then provide the shear structure that we need to be able to get the client that endless look that they're looking for out the living room.
Everybody wants the huge wall of windows when you got a view like this, so
that's
it's
right.
Understandable.
Yep. Nichole, some other fun things that we're doing on this house is you notice that we're standing on a slab instead of a subfloor. Mm-hmm. The clients are very concerned about moisture, and so we've designed this entire foundation to be on an insulated slab, but we went one step further. We went ahead and made it a radiant floor slab, so this would theoretically become a net zero home. So we built our stem walls, we insulated the edges, we filled it with gravel, we insulated that. Then we put in our mats, our geogrid, all the steel will get tied into it. And then we came in and we put in a radiant loop system, which will then heat up the slab on really cold days and keep that thermal mass warm. And you can see right here where all of the radiant loops will come up and tie into the thermostat. Another neat thing that we do is all of our exterior walls are 2x6 framed instead of 2x4. And by doing a 2x6 framed wall, we can get an R19 in there with just the insulation alone, not counting any foam or additional layers that we put on the wall. That, with our insulated headers and our spray foam roofs, really give us a very tight energy envelope. And that gives our clients on average about a mid 50 on the HERS score. So it's almost 50% more efficient than code without doing any type of renewable resource.
Sounds like a great option.
It is, and when you add the radiant and or solar, you could get to net zero very quickly.
Very awesome, very cool. Sean, thank you again so much for being here with us. You've definitely had provided some wonderful insight into those kind of questions and concerns that people might have looking into building, and we'd like to just give you a minute to plug your business.
That's great. Thank you so much for having me, Nichole. I really enjoyed talking to you all. At Livingstone, we design and build homes with no regrets. If you'd like to learn more about our whole living concept, please check us out online at livingstoneconstruction.com. Thank you.
Well, that was great, Nichole. I think that's definitely really valuable for anybody that's considering building a house. And Sean's a great guy, builds a great product. It was really great to see that.
Yeah, it's always great to go on site and to see it kind of in that progress. You know, a lot of times we're just walking through the finished product. So it's pretty interesting to get to see the steps that lead up to something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, next up, we're going to go over to Garrett Woodward with Smoky Mountain News to hear about the top things you wouldn't want to miss.
Hey y'all, it's Garrett Woodward, Arts and Entertainment Editor for the Smoky Mountain News and Music Editor for Smoky Mountain Living Magazine. It's August. Everything is going on right now. Summer is about halfway done, but that doesn't mean that we're halfway through all the fun things that are going on in Western North Carolina. Now there's actually so much going on that I actually had to do a super secret list of all the really cool things that are going on in our area. So I'm going to read just a few of them, and then the ones that I don't get through and the ones that you might want to find out more information about, just get a hold of Nichole or Jim. They have everything. They got the list. So okay, first and foremost, Smoky Mountain Folk Festival, the 50th anniversary at Lake Junaluska, August 30th and 31st. What's really cool is this is one of the longest running festivals in Western North Carolina. It is all the Appalachian folk music, mountain music, bluegrass, cloggers, all the above. It's there, it's great. It's in the Stewart Auditorium, one of the most historic and beautiful music venues in our backyard. All right. Oh, there we go. Canton Labor Day Festival, September 1st and 2nd. Headliners are Balsam Range, Haywood County's own Balsam Range, the current and reigning International Bluegrass Music Association Entertainer of the Year, with headliner also being the Oak Ridge Boys. So if you like Elvira, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Remember them? They're great. Fantastic band. September 21st, North Carolina Ceramic Arts Festival at Pack Square Park. There'll be dozens, if not hundreds, of artisan crafters and potters that will be there selling the wares, probably having live demonstrations. Always a fun time, especially Pack Square, the heart of downtown Asheville. August 7th and 10th, Laugh Your Asheville Off. That is a comedy festival that's been going on for several years now in downtown Asheville. Different venues have different comedians and all kinds of improv groups. A lot of fun times. Highly recommend that one. Let's see, Oscar Blues Burning Can Festival, Brevard, August 9th and 10th. So what's cool about that is Oscar Blues Brewing is one of the largest microbrew companies in the United States, and their East Coast headquarters is in Brevard. So this is a day of live music and craft beer and sunshine in the mountains. So always fun. Shindig on the Green. Probably one of the oldest events continuous in Asheville and Greater Western North Carolina. August 17th, 24th, and 31st at Pack Square. So what's cool about that is there's a lot of regional Appalachian cloggers and musicians go on stage in Pack Square and just kind of do a run through of some of the old time dances and old time traditional tunes. Very, very entertaining. North Carolina Apple Festival, Hendersonville, August 30th and September 2nd. So a lot of people don't realize this, that North Carolina is one of the biggest apple growing producers in the United States, with Henderson County the largest apple producing county in the state. So you are an apple country, the center of the universe for apples in Southern Appalachia is Henderson County. So there'll be a lot of great ciders, a lot of great hard and non-alcoholic ciders. And on top of that, a lot of fun games, sugar donuts, all that good stuff. So if you want to know about the rest of this list and all the fun things going on, just get a hold of Nichole or Jim. Good to see you all. See you guys in October.
Thanks, Garrett. As always, it's great to have his perspective, and we'll probably check some of those out.
Well, thanks for watching, guys. We'll wrap up the episode here. As always, feel free to reach out if you've got any questions or ideas for topics you'd like to see covered in future episodes. We'll see you next time.